my friends. I'm Maynard Eaton, and this is SCLC Today TV. Dr. Steele is our president and CEO, but also the guy in charge of our 67th annual convention this week. Big week for you, boss.
Yes, Maynard. Thank you so much. And it's going to be virtual. You know, we're still here, and we tell it like it is. Just think back. 62nd annual convention. Yeah. We missed one last year, and when we were boycotting South Carolina, that's why SCLC was asked to come when the Confederacy or the Confederate flag came down from South Carolina. The governor invited me to be right there next to her, pretty much, in terms of that particular commemoration of the Confederacy. We have lost two conventions in terms of this organization last year because of the pandemic, and particularly when we boycotted South Carolina. But I'm just happy. Yes, sir. Go ahead, please.
We'll get back to the convention in a second. When you talk about a loss, okay. This weekend marks the 1-year anniversary of the loss of John Lewis, the first anniversary of his untimely death. And you talk about voting rights, you talk about SCLC, you talk about this, or as Helen Butler said, this is our Selma movement. We got to stand on his bridge talking about John Lewis. What did he mean to you, sir? What did John Lewis mean to you and to SCLC family?
Well, I remember when I was newly elected president of SCLC locally in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. One of the first person I got outside of Reverend John Nettles and Dr. Laurie, the third person I got to come speak to our community and educate our folks in terms of their vision at that time was none other than Congressman John Lewis. And what really motivated the people and myself when he talked about preaching to the chickens, that was the most inspiring sermon I heard. He would say, as a young boy, he'd go out there in the backyard with the chicken coop. And I know about that because my grandmama in Tuscaloosa had a chicken coop. And he would go out there and he couldn't have no one else to listen to him as a little boy. He would preach to the chickens. And I remember when I was coming up as a little boy, and my sister and brother would say, as well as my mom and dad, that boy gonna be a preacher. And I would get the encyclopedia and use it as a Bible. But John Lewis was very inspirational to me, being a fellow Alabamian and also being a roommate of none other than Dr. Bernard Lafayette in seminary. So that meant a lot to me. And to have a close relationship to Congressman Lewis as I had was really a monumental point of interest in terms of my moving forward.
We knew him, at least I did, as a city councilman, and you knew him before that, and now a congressman. But now he's become a legend, has he not?
He has. He's become a legend, and rightfully so. And we must continue the legacy of Congressman John Lewis. But we can't stop there. Man, I was telling someone in Memphis this weekend, we can be ceremoniously and talk about history, but we can't stay there. We have a lot of more work to do. That was like when I went over into Berlin, Germany, if I may. In Berlin, Germany, they wanted me to continuously to talk about Dr. King. I've been there 3 or 4 times, and every meeting I'm talking about Dr. King and what he meant. But the people there didn't want me to talk about the problems in Germany today. And I refused to go in the pulpit and speak until they said, okay, you be yourself and tell us what you want to tell us. That's what it's all about.
It's also in Congress right now all about the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, which seems stalled. And this past week, our president, Biden, talked about voting rights, how important it is. Let's hear him talk about that.
Said time and again, no matter what, you can never stop the American people from voting. They will decide. And the power must always be with the people. So hear me clearly. There's an unfolding assault taking place in America today an attempt to suppress and subvert the right to vote and fair and free elections, an assault on democracy, an assault on liberty, an assault on who we are as Americans. My fellow Americans, requires fair-mindedness, devotion to justice, corny as it sounds, love of country, requires us to unite in common purpose, declares here and now, we the people will never give up. We will not give in. We will overcome. We will do it together. And guaranteeing the right to vote, ensuring every vote is counted, has always been the most patriotic thing we can do. Just remember, our late friend John Lewis said, freedom is not a state, it's an act. Freedom is not a state, it's an act. And we must act and we will act. For our cause is just, our vision is clear, and our hearts are full. For we the people, for our democracy, for America itself, we must act. God bless you all, and may God protect our troops and all those who stand to watch over our democracy. But act. We've got to act. Thank you.
Wow. Dr. Steele, some have said that's the best speech President Biden has given yet. What did it mean to you?
It's very good, motivating, but I've heard a lot of good speeches. I want some action.
Yeah,
we are the direct action organization. That's it in a capsule.
Is that your stridency, your criticism, your being outspoken about voting rights and what the president should do? Many people wonder why you weren't at the White House table of civil rights groups. Is it because they may not want to hear what you have to say?
I don't know. For whatever reason, Mr. Eaton, I was not invited. All I can say is that there are many meetings that Dr. King wasn't invited to, and he wasn't at the table. And regardless of being at the table or not, I pull a folding chair up out in the street and sit down and talk the gospel of civil rights. We as a people must understand that we live in a racist society and America has not been healed. Maybe some people don't want to get it. I don't know. That's not my problem. That's not my question. My mandate is to continue to go into the wilderness and preach the gospel of civil rights and voting rights.
But have you been too tough, you think, for some of your colleagues maybe to hear what you have to say, and particularly the president? You're outspoken.
And we'll maintain my persona of being outspoken to what the truth is and what is right, and represent those who've been disenfranchised. I talk about the truth in terms of society. I'm not here to win over any friends or popularity contests in terms of what I do. I'm here to convey the message, just like Ida B. Well. I was with her family, and I was on program to talk about her accomplishments. And Maynard, do you know she was forced out, burned out, almost destroyed, went around the world, and had she been living today, she would be 159 years of age. Maybe I would have to die. And 159 years later, folks say, Steele told us that, but don't be quiet. Don't be silent. Don't be afraid. Remember this, power concedes to nothing without a demand. It never has, and it never will. Frederick Douglass.
You were in Memphis this week for two reasons. One, the Ida B. Wells celebration. You have a photo of that. You have a poster of Ida B. Wells that you would show us. And that was quite a meaningful event for you, was it not? You and your wife?
It was very motivating. And to hear her family talk about how she was turned down, and how she didn't have the support that she should have had, leaving Holly Springs, Mississippi, going to Memphis and then Chicago, then throughout the world. and New York, and then selling in Chicago. My wife looked at me and whispered in my ear. She said, "That sounds like you. You know, you've been all over the world." She said, "That sounds like you." I said, "Babe, I'm ready to march now." I said, "When they start speaking, I'm going to lead a march." But the fact being is that you don't give in to the pressure of people not wanting you at the table. You don't have to be at the table. Dr. King was never at the table. He was in the street. And I like the fact that he was talking to Billy Graham one day, and Billy Graham asked him, "Dr. King, many people don't know this. What can I do to help you?" Dr. King told him, "You stay out in the stadiums and the pulpit, and you support me just being in the street. I'm out here in the street. I see poor people every day. Many people talk about the poor, ain't around the poor. Many people saying they want to help the disenfranchised, not around the disenfranchised. I'm around folks who's shooting up and cutting up every day, not just in Atlanta, but throughout wherever I go. But thank God that God has enabled me to sustain myself and my family and my wife, and we ain't going nowhere. We're going to stand here and we're going to tell the truth."
You were also in Memphis talking about marching and protesting. You were standing up for Purvis Payne, who's you think is unfairly sentenced to life in prison. Unfairly. And you were there calling for protests and marches on his behalf, were you not?
Absolutely. And even we had a press conference in terms of Mr. Payne, Purvis Payne. I was there with his family. They have officially recognized us as the institution of civil rights or organization to represent the family. Purvis Payne has been on death row for 33 years, and he came out this last Friday for the first time since 2007 in public in the courtroom, where none other than his public defender, attorney Kelly Henry, was representing him and doing an outstanding job. And I'm just here to say that we committed to the family that by Thanksgiving, no later than Christmas, we have the envision from heaven, from God himself, that he will be exonerated and that he will be a free man after 33 years. That's what justice is all about. Not talking about you didn't meet certain requirements in terms of the structure of a date. Saying the date has passed for someone to be exonerated because of some failure within the system. You mean to tell me you're going to execute someone because of a failure in the system and the innocent? We're not going to accept that.
Dr. Steele, explain to those who wonder, why does this matter to John Q., black man in Arizona or Philadelphia? Why is this important, you think?
Well, it's important because, first of all, it's in Memphis, Shelby County, Memphis, Tennessee. That's where Dr. King was assassinated. And in Shelby County, it has a historicity of racism and violence. When you talk about Purvis Payne, it takes us back to 159 years what Ida B. Wells was talking about, the lynching of black men, and primarily because of white women. And it's been foreseen in terms of working with Purvis that this is just another modern day lynching, saying that he was enticed and interested in having a white woman. This is 2021. This is 2021. And you're talking about Ida B. Wells, who 159 years ago was born. She would be 159 years of age. But this woman matriculated into her calling from God to try and protest the lynching of black men. And most of those concerns involved a white woman. No difference than Purvis Payne.
Wow. That's eye-opening and chilling, to say the least. This week, today, as you sit in Sunday in Atlanta, and tomorrow, Senator Amy Klobuchar, I mispronounced her name, but you know what I'm talking about. Senator Amy, but she's here talking about voting rights. One of the speakers will testify tomorrow is also one of our speakers at our SCLC convention. Let's hear from Helen Butler.
Oh, yes, it is very critical. If we want to make the changes in the policy, whether it's for a livable wage, to have family paid leave, if we want good health care, if we want great roads, if we want to make sure our children have the best education, public policy, some elected officials, Manny, makes that policy that impacts our lives. So if we want the right kind of policy, we've got to be sure that we get engaged, that we vote, because that's the way we change that policy is through that elected official.
Dr. Steele, I butchered that name, Senator Amy Klobuchar, but you also, SCLC Votes, you did a series of, you called for a series of programs about voting. And of course, Ms. Helen Butler spoke to us then, and so we're speaking to our convention this week, will she not?
Yeah, and Attorney Barbara Artwine, who worked with us, as well as none other than Ms. Helen Butler, who's doing a great job, and she worked very close with Dr. Lowry, as I did. And SCLC's always been involved, with the right to vote. That's why you got the 1965 Voter Rights Act, because of Jose Williams and John Lewis and others, and ultimately Dr. King came. But don't forget, the story goes that reason folks was afraid to go to Selma because Dr. Bernard Lafayette did some research, and he was there 2 years before the other leaders were there. Our chairman of the board, Dr. Bernard Lafayette, and doing the research, he and others discovered that the perception was white folks was too mean, and black folks, Negroes at the time, was too afraid. So that scenario, that observation has not changed. We have to understand we can't just be ceremoniously involved and getting on TV and camera, because TV folks cannot decide who we are and who our leaders are. We have to get out there, and you're a journalist, and I understand that, but you also understand what I'm saying, Mr. Eaton, in terms of the black progression of black folks in terms of the movement. We don't have to have no particular leader. We have to have a particular interest of freedom in front of us, and the rest will take care of itself. We want totally freedom, and when we get freedom in America, you free the world. Most folks don't know that.
Is that the message? Is that the meaning? That's the torch you're holding up for this week in our 62nd convention?
Absolutely. When you're talking about the enslavement of a people, we are still enslaved economically. They had the transatlantic African slave trade. This country has to bring about a payment, a reparation to those of us who are descendants of slaves. This country does not believe in sharing in the profits. That's why you had slavery. You let me have every Friday a documentation that say I don't have to pay my employees. SCLC would be well off, Mr. Eaton. We would be well off. We wouldn't have no financial problems. But that's why America is so wealthy and the wealthiest country in the world. Why, Steele? Glad you asked. It was because they had slavery and we worked for free. We never had a problem with getting a job. We just never been paid.
Ladies and gentlemen, you'll get paid psychologically and spiritually. July 22nd, July 23rd, the 62nd annual convention of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. There you see Dr. Charles Steele Jr. and our chairman, Dr. Bernard Lafayette, a civil rights legend in his own right. Join us again, the 22nd and 23rd, the triple threat, poverty, the pandemic, the polls. Dr. Steele, you'll be speaking about what specifically before we go?
Just what I talked about just a few minutes ago. We got to have some economic justice. We have to have healing. That's what we're talking. We're going to be talking about in terms of economics that African-American black folks got less than 3% of the loans from the banks. We had 42 black banks 10 years ago. We're down to 17 black banks right now. And we're talking about 2045, 2050, black wealth will be at zero. Zero. No money in the black community. Wake up, America. Wake up, African Americans. Let's collaborate and straighten this racism and eradicate it from our society. The celebration is over. Now we got to work toward freedom, true freedom, on economic justice and voters' rights.
That's the tough talk, the straight talk, the truth about civil rights and America's plight at the moment by Dr. Charles Steele Jr., the president of SCLC. We'll see you Thursday and Friday, 22nd and 23rd at our SCLC 60-second convention. Thank you, Dr. Steele.